And Marc Ó Sé, good morning to you. How you doing?
Hi, Jar. How are things? You well?
Yeah, pretty good. There's a madness involved in that game yesterday from the very first minute where McManus gets free and scores that goal to the very last seconds when Monaghan have a chance to win it even after Clifford's goal. How do you begin to analyse it? What's the Kerry feeling and what the quality of their performance was?
I think we got out of jail big time. Very lucky to be still in the championship. But to be fair to the lads, I think they really battled. They had to. We saw, I suppose, a different setup in tactics from the Galway game to the Monaghan game the last day, particularly with the way that they used the sweeper against Galway and played without one for most of the game the last day, much to the detriment of the full backline. Because I suppose looking at this Kerry team prior to the Cork game, Ger, I would have said that this Kerry team is young, they're on the right track, but there are areas where they need to work on, namely the full back line and middle of the field. And they were the two areas, again, the last day, which I felt for Kerry were found wanting. I thought David Moran was playing a lonely four on his own out there. Monaghan were winning every breaking ball, and as you said, Monaghan were 1-1 to no score after the first few minutes, and then McManus was really on fire. So from our point of view, to get back into the game, particularly up there in a hostile environment, it showed character. I think a few of the young lads really stood up, the likes of Gavin White, David Clifford. But look, to be honest, there was just too many areas where Kerry really didn't perform, and that's the big worrying point down here. So we're still in it, but we're depending on results now for Galway to win and for us to beat Kildare. So a lot of ifs there, but I still think it's a Kerry are kind of finding new players, and it'll take time. But yesterday was encouraging in a particular point of view, but largely the bigger picture, Kerry won't be happy with yesterday.
Just that whole notion of Kerry in the past coming through very difficult matches like this and using it as a springboard into the rest of the championship. The difference, I think, between your team that would have been able to kind of come through some of those games, you think of there's an Antrim game, there's a Sligo game, there's a couple of other games like that where clearly something was happening in the background, but that team was laden down with quality, experienced players. This team might have quality players in it, but there's a raft of inexperience in it too, so it's not quite the same. You can't just draw those parallels and say, this is Kerry being Kerry this year and they're going to bounce forward from this automatically.
No, and I suppose you mentioned our team there. The one thing with our team is when we played games, say we lost to Cork in 0-6 and 0-9, but we played, Longford in Killarney, and we played Sligo and Tralee. So we had home ties for those games, and we were lucky to get home ties because we were very lucky to get out of jail against Sligo in 0-9. And to have to go up to Clonus in a real hostile environment for a young Kerry team, it does show that they have fierce character. And there was, in the first half was very poor, but to come out in the second half, to identify areas where they had to work on, namely Rory Beggin's kickouts, where he absolutely destroyed us in the first half. And to be able to come out and, we didn't totally get on top of his kickouts, but they identified it and they went after his kickouts, and we did get some success out of it. So for young fellas to be able to go up there and do that, now albeit they were older players playing the likes of Donaghy and David Moran and these lads, and Donaghy, to be fair, I thought he was absolutely outstanding in terms of not his overall performance, because I don't think that he contributed much, but I mean, he's such a great character. He's stuck in there all through the game. I don't think Kerry played him to his best, because if they did, they would have kicked ball into him, because we know how dangerous he is. But that said, that last ball that went in, he caused absolute mayhem inside the Monaghan full back line, and he just if you look back at the video of the game, and you think he's just getting a hand to it. He knew exactly where David Clifford was. He knew where to palm the ball to, and I just thought it was outstanding from Donaghy. It showed the mental strength of him, the way that he kept going to the 75th minute of the game and was able to palm the ball to David Clifford, and what a finish. But look, we were so lucky. That happened as well against Mayo in 2014, where Donaghy had a huge effect in the end of the game, came on as a sub and passed the ball to James O'Donoghue, and Kerry got a lifeline against Mayo, and we were able to beat them in the replay in Limerick. But look, I just had to mention Donaghy. I thought he was outstanding towards the end of the game there, and Kerry didn't play him to his strengths. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, though, we did play second fiddle. McManus was outstanding. Again, I think Kerry played the game on the other team's terms, like they did last Sunday against Galway. So there's an awful lot of work to do for the Kildare game, and if you get beyond that, for a Dublin game.
Mark, the Conor McManus performance yesterday kind of had the hallmarks of Andy Moran last year, where Kerry get themselves into a one-on-one situation where a man is getting roasted, really, and you'd be slow enough to kind of put a lot of blame at the foot of Mark Griffin because of that, because he was isolated. And when Kerry don't allow that isolation to happen, when they do play a sweeper, things get a lot worse for them. So what is the solution to this problem that seems to be cropping up quite a bit for Eamon Fitzmaurice?
I think it's a number of things. First of all, I think if you're losing middle of the field, it's always a tough battle to try and win the full back line. It's for your full back line to do well, to excel. Secondly, I think, down through the years, we were blessed with players who were able to come into the full back line and do a man marking job. In my team, you had the likes of Mike McCarthy, Tom O'Sullivan. There was a few of us back there, and we had the job of doing the man marking role. Whereas in this team, if you were to look at who does the man marking job, it's very hard to find who'll actually do it. Jason Foley did a great job against Galway and Damien Comer last Sunday, but you had a whole new full back line today. I'm not just talking about one or two players. You had three new players in there, and that's a massive turnaround in 6 or 7 days. So, these young, as I say, they're young lads. Ronan Shanahan came in there. I actually thought he did quite well, because he went on McManus in the second half, and he kind of did a good bit better. But that said, it's so hard when you look at the game. Monaghan were winning every single breaking ball. Every ball was going in straight away. So I know myself from playing inside there. It's a real lonely place playing inside in the full back line when you're getting roasted around the middle and the ball is going in hot and heavy. And then when you're marking one of the best forwards in the country, probably the best inside forward in the country, it's a really lonely place to be. So from that point of view, but as I said, it is an area where Kerry really need to work on, because if you're looking at this Kerry team and you're trying to look at areas where you can get at them, it's their full back line and, I suppose, cover in the middle of the field. It's a real needy area for Kerry, and it's a worry for Eamon Fitzmaurice now and his backroom team, because twice now in the last 2 weeks that they've been found wanting there. So it'll be very interesting what he'll do for the next game, if it's bringing Jason Foley, who was injured for yesterday, if he brings him back in. You mentioned there about the sweeper. I don't think it has been working. But that said, I think there's ways that you can cover for your full back line without even playing a sweeper. You hold your half back line in situ, and you have your midfielders playing very defensive. And I think if Kerry can kind of just get a hold on that and have extra cover, be mindful that their full back line are behind them, and if they can have cover for them, I think they can improve in that area.
Yeah, Eamon Fitzmaurice really has had an unusual season so far. It looks like there's been confusion in terms of what they're trying to do from game to game. Why, at this stage of where the team is it not clear what Kerry's chosen style of play is at the moment?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot, to be honest. And there was talks that the sweeper was used last year against Mayo and that it didn't work. Well, Kerry have used sweepers in the past in teams that I've played in, and there was nothing really made of it. Where Aidan O'Mahony played as a sweeper and played that role quite effectively. So I mean, it isn't as if it's a new thing to this Kerry team. Look, we've tried it in a few games and it hasn't worked. But I think there's other factors surrounding that it didn't work, and namely, middle of the field maybe that. I think, as I said, I mentioned David. I think he was very much on his own there yesterday. So I think there's other factors that come into play about Kerry's tactics and the way they set up. And I think that using the sweeper as a kind of a jail card about why it isn't working. It certainly didn't work against Galway. I think that the game suited us to push up, whereas we played the game on Galway's terms, and they were just coming straight through the middle. And the way that we were set up, the way Peter Crowley was playing it, I thought he should have been more in outside the D, around that area, whereas instead he was inside in the 14 or the 21 area, watching the boys inside him. If he was out a bit further, I felt maybe he could have kind of played the two roles. He could have stopped the lads coming in and also be mindful of the fellas behind him. So when you are playing the role, I think you have to kind of define it properly, how best to use it, to use the sweeper. That was an area where Aidan O'Mahony, I thought, used to always do very well for Kerry. And but that said, there were other factors around it, particularly the dominance that Monaghan had around the middle, or Galway had around the middle, and the last day, I suppose, Monaghan as well.
Do you think they know their best team at the moment, though?
I don't think so, no. I think the full back line, he certainly doesn't know what he's going to do in the full back line. He switched his keepers yesterday. There was a lot made of the goalkeeper about Brian. I still think, whilst he had a period there, all right, where he was under pressure, it was an improvement on the Galway match. Middle of the field, I think that, I've already mentioned David. Jack Barry, the last two games, he doesn't seem to be I suppose, the player we know that he can be, but that said, I made a point during the week that there's a big difference between pace and legs, and it's pace you're looking for coming off the bench. We've seen that in the past with the likes of Ryan or McMenamin from Dublin, and bringing on the likes of Donnacha Walsh against Galway after 66 minutes, I didn't think was the right option, because Donnacha, whilst he's in towards the end of his career, he still has legs, whereas pace he wouldn't be blessed with pace. I was thinking that yesterday's game, particularly the way the Monaghan play a running game, I thought it was crying out for the likes of Donnacha to be put into the middle of the field for maybe 40-50 minutes, and then to empty the bench, bring on Maher, who did quite well when he came on the last day, but I just felt that it was really set up for maybe the likes of Donnacha Walsh to come on and play in the middle of the field, because we've seen the way the game has gone, the way that players have particularly Dublin, the way they've put players who are not necessarily midfielders and put them in there, and they've done very well. So I just felt that yesterday it was a game that was crying out for the likes of Donnacha Walsh's legs and his energy around the middle of the field. Half forward line, Sean O'Shea was very effective from place balls, and I thought that people argue that he wasn't as influential from play, but I was surprised that he came off. Kevin McCarthy, Micheál Burns was industrious when he came in, but trying to find the proper inside line as well is going to be interesting, because Paul Ganey, it seems, is injured and isn't firing on all the cylinders. Donny, he was quiet. The ball wasn't kicked into him, so it's got. James didn't start. The one thing that we do know is that Clifford and Sean O'Shea were, for large parts, our two best forwards again the last day, so they're certainties. But you're right, I don't think Gaiman is certain of the team. Rarely have we seen in the past where Kerry have put the same team out 15 week in, week out, and I think a settled team is what he needs. Sometimes you go through the qualifiers and you go through the back door and you find your team and that's it. But there's no time for that now. You've Kildare at home in Killarney, and it's very important that he gets a settled team.
Mark, just picking up on the change with the keepers, is that a huge decision to make in the middle of the championship? Just from my own thinking, like if you're standing out under the ball as a midfield, it can be very hard to readjust when maybe you haven't been playing with a keeper week in, week out. And I thought Brian did pretty well yesterday, but it is a huge decision to make. And where does it go after this? Because Shane Murphy has been the number one pretty much all year. Do they keep with Brian Kelly now going into next week?
Yeah, I think they have to, Michael. I agree with you. Like, I think it was a strange decision to make, particularly when you're changing your goalkeeper up mid-season. It's a very strange one. And then you add that Shane Murphy was your captain. So I don't know, but I agree with you as well. I think Brian certainly improved. His confidence took an awful battering last year after the Mayo game. It's rarely you see a goalie kicking the ball out and it going over the end line. And down here people tend to stick the dagger in, and he did. His confidence took an awful battering, but I thought he was outstanding yesterday. As I said, look, every goalkeeper is going to have a tough period, but in terms of your question there about the kickouts, I'm sure that David and Jack Barry are used to Brian's kickouts as well, having played with him last year and the year before. So it's not going to be that new, or that it's new to them, for this keeper to be coming in, because he has played a lot on this Kerry team. So the boys will be used to him. So from that point of view, it's not going to be too much of a change. But changing your goalkeeper mid-season, certainly, I know from playing in the full back line, you have a kind of a chemistry with your goalie. He's constantly shouting at you in the full back line. And then the following week, if you go out with a new fella behind you, it is a huge change. And I suppose the important thing is that Brian, he's vocal, and he's talking to his full back line, and he's talking to his midfielders, and they're getting those calls right. But look, they have 2 weeks now to get that right, which is good, as opposed to a week when the games are coming hot and heavy. But certainly, changing your keeper mid-season is a bit very drastic.
We had Darragh Kinage on Friday, and he said that 2009 was the last time he could remember the vitriol being as strong in the aftermath as the build-up to this game was. Presumably that all changes now that they've had such a miraculous escape from Clonus, and the Kerry public gets behind the team this week and next week?
Yeah, I hope so, because we're still in it, and I think you have to look at the bigger picture. You have to look at Eamon brought in 7 or 8 young players at the start of the year, and we before the Cork game we weren't giving Kerry a chance, and they were outstanding against Cork, albeit against a very poor Cork side, and then we saw that when Cork went up to Tyrone. So I think we have to stand back a bit and realise that this is a team in transition. This is a team that needs a bit of time. There's some fantastic young players that are going to do very well for Kerry in the future. It mightn't be this year, but I think we need to give them a bit of time, give the management a bit of time with them. The young fellas I mentioned, we saw young Gavin White there yesterday. He made a few bursts up the middle. It would remind you of young Jack McCaffrey. Clifford to score 1 goal and 3 points off scraps. Sean O'Shea was outstanding from dead balls. So I just think that there are some great young players there, but they do need a bit of time. And if we get a win over Kildare and Galway win against Monaghan, you're in an All-Ireland semi-final. And for young lads to get as far as an All-Ireland semi-final is a huge achievement. And I'd agree with that. I think that this team needs a bit of time, and hopefully they'll get good experience this year. But in terms of winning All-Irelands, I don't think that's going to happen this year. But hopefully a year experience will give them that.
Just one last one, Mark. How worried would you be from the perspective of James O'Donoghue at the moment? Like, not firing on all cylinders, was obviously dropped yesterday, puts in the key ball at the end, obviously, which is the counterpoint to all of this, but he's not as good. He doesn't seem to be firing like he was a few years ago. Is there something wrong, do you think, fitness-wise, that he's not reaching that peak? Because it can be a little bit frustrating, I'd imagine, to see the talent he has and it's not being reached at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. We all know how good a player James is. He's still trying to rediscover his 2015 or 2014 form. And you look at last year, you look at the 2 games in Munster, outstanding. And then he was kind of, for large parts of the rest of the year, he was kind of, just playing very, very, not the standard that we come to expect from James O'Donoghue. And then this year, you look at the league, missed the league with injury. And then he's straight into the team for the championship. For me, I think that he needed to maybe sit on the bench for a while, and what that would do then. And I wrote about that in one of the articles. I said that they should have gone with Donaghy and Clifford and Gainey and bring on the likes of James as a sub, and that would create huge competition within the team. You see it in different counties. You see it in Dublin, fellas coming off the bench making a change. And I think that now the fact that James is on the bench, he realises he's there. There's going to be huge competition in training now over the next 2 weeks, and I wouldn't like to be a cornerback marking him now in the next week or two. But that said, I think that it's no bad thing having James coming off the bench, because you need a go-to player coming off the bench, and I think that's something Kerry have been lacking the last few weeks. And having a player of his calibre coming off the bench now, it'll ask questions of defenders who may be marking the likes of Paul Gainey or Kieran Donaghy or David Clifford, and next thing all of a sudden you're marking a James O'Donoghue coming off the bench and with a point to prove. So I think that it's about getting the balance right. We mentioned the Kerry team. I think that's one thing that Eamon did get right. He did get a few things right, because at the end of the day they got the result up there. But you know, having James as a go-to man coming off the bench is a good thing for Kerry, and it'll create great competition within the panel.
Mark, great stuff. Thanks for joining us this morning. Cheers.